Toni Preckwinkle, Chair of the Cook County Democratic Party. I want to welcome you to our podcast, The 80. It's about our candidates and our leaders. We're beginning the podcast by interviewing our elected Democratic committee people to discuss their backgrounds and thoughts about the history and future of our party. Today, I'm pleased to welcome Michael Scott Jr., who is Alderman and Committeeman of what ward?
24th Ward.
The 24th Ward. So let's begin by telling people where the 24th Ward is, Michael.
Well, first, thank you, Madam President, for having me this morning. So when you think about North Lawndale, you think about the 24th Ward, you're thinking west side of Chicago. So we are, in boundary-wise, if you think on the south, we're bordered by 22nd Street, Cermak. On the north, we're bordered by 290. On the east, we go as far east as California, and on the west, we go as far west as Cicero. So we have a nice little box. Now, we cut in and out a couple places, but those are about our boundaries.
Okay, what communities does that include?
That's North Lawndale, that is South Lawndale, East and West Garfield, and a little smidget of Austin.
Okay, all right, so solidly West Side Ward.
That's right, we're West Side. West Side is the best side.
Okay, all right. I'm a South Sider, I won't argue today, though.
Okay.
All right, now, you come from a distinguished political family. How did you get your start in politics?
So two ways, right? So again, my father, who was in, I think, 4 or 5 different mayoral administrations over the course of his career. My mother also worked in city government. My grandmother actually was a matriarch of our political family, and she started doing some community activism around North Lawndale when she matriculated here from New Orleans. But the story starts when I was about 9 years old, and my mother was the ward superintendent in the 24th Ward, and Jesse Miller was the alderman. And he had just gotten elected, and we were sitting around in the ward yard talking, and he asked me, what did I want to do when I grew up? And I said, hey, what do you do? And he says, I'm the alderman. I said, what does that entail? Well, we community servants, we help create business in the ward. We kind of fix the infrastructure, and I'm more like a people person. And I said, well, I want your job when I grow up. And so have it 40 years later. I'm the alderman of the 24th Ward, but more firmly, I think for my family and my family's dealing in city government is kind of why I'm here.
All right. Now, your ward was historically part of the Jewish West Side, is that right? And gradually, Black folks moved in and the demography of the community changed?
That is correct. So when you think of North Lawndale and 24th Ward, it's always been a transient community. So back in let's say the 20s, the 30s, we had the most densely populated ward in the city of Chicago. At our peak at about 1939, 1940, we were at about 125,000 people, and that was Eastern European, a lot of Jewish folks. We had a lot of synagogues, and but that's because Sears and Roebuck was here. We had Ryerson Steel, we had Hot Point, Sunbeam. So anything that you would think of in terms of industry in America was kind of housed here in North Lawndale. Not everything, but a good chunk of it. And so there were jobs.
There were lots of jobs.
Exactly. And what the story is, if you would have a job on Monday, you could lose that job and find a better job on Wednesday because there was just so many jobs. And so those promise of jobs brought a lot of African Americans around the 50s and the 60s when they started to matriculate from the Sun Belt. That's actually how my grandparents got here. And when Black folks started moving in, we started moving in groves and more of the Eastern European, more of the Caucasian, more folks who were here started to move out. And that's kind of how Black folks came to the 24th Ward from the Sun Belt, and because of the promise of great jobs.
So it was a manufacturing center, and
it was
lots of employment opportunities. And of course, that's attractive to whether it's immigrants or migrants who are looking for a foothold in the city.
That is exactly correct. And if you think about it, Sears was here. And so Sears is the Amazon of its day. So, the same way you would go on Amazon and find everything that you want on the computer, you could do that in Sears. And so there were so many jobs. And Sears alone had 21,000 jobs here in this community. So it was a job center, a job hub.
Wow. But it's had its challenges more recently.
It
What are the
has.
challenges that you face as aldermen and committeemen in your ward today?
Well, as that story kind of progresses, in 1968, well, a little bit before that. So let's say 1966, 67, Martin Luther King moved here to kind of chronicle the housing inequities in North Lawndale, because all of the African Americans were here, and all the contract buying and redlining. And so he moved here to kind of highlight some of those things. Um, he I don't think he was as successful as he wanted to be in that regard. And so he moved out in about 67, 68. And in the latter part of 68, he was assassinated. And when that happened, all of the people in this community kind of unfortunately tore the community apart. So it was a big riot, a big fire, and it burned down everything along Roosevelt, along Ogden, along 16th Street, which were really our heavy commercial districts. And unfortunately, since then, none of those things have come back. In 1975, 1980s, Sears
That's
started
50
to move out.
years ago. Let's be clear.
Yep.
That's 50 years ago.
That's 50. That is 50 years ago. And so in the 70s and 80s, Sears, the big behemoth of jobs that I was telling you about, they started to move. Their headquarters moved downtown to the big Sears Tower. They started moving their jobs out of North Lawndale. And, since then, we have not had serious investment as it relates to this community. And so my challenge is, folks who live here, one, just having hope of having jobs. We also have a high rate of recidivism. So many of the people who were here were arrested or that come back from the county jails. A lot of them land here in the 24th ward. And so it is unfortunately hard to employ folks who have already done their service and done their time. And so as a community, those are some of the things that we're grappling with. Joblessness. We still have not a lot of quality housing stock as it relates to homeowners. We probably have the largest number of vacant lots, or the second largest number of vacant lots in the city of Chicago. I would say the city owns about 2,500 vacant lots in the 24th ward. And so it's hard to get somebody to take root here when there aren't a lot of quality homes for folks to be here. And without homes and without rooftops, then businesses don't come. And so it's a cyclical kind of thing that we're trying to combat. Joblessness, quality housing, and the rate of recidivism and crime. And so all of those things kind of play into point. So, what we're trying to do, and I can tell you a little bit about what we're trying to do. Program that we're trying to build 1,000 new homes in North Lawndale. We're working with United Power to bring 1,000 homes, affordable homes, to North Lawndale. We also have just had an RFP that was let out on Costner and Roosevelt, where hopefully we'll bring 1,000 to 1,500 new jobs. It's about 21 acres of land that we're trying to bring back some industry back into this community. And so hopefully that will be the catalyst for growth. I think that this community is poised because our location, you can't beat our location. We're about 7 minutes from downtown. We're in between 55 to 90. Ogden runs through us, runs to downtown to the suburbs. And so we're in a great location. I think we're poised for a big comeback.
All right. What can you do as a committee person? You've talked about your kind of ideas and obligations as an alderman. What can you do as a committee person on behalf of your constituents? What do you want the Democratic Party in Cook County to do?
So one, I think that it is incumbent upon us as committee people to make sure folks kind of are educated about voting and how important it is to vote. I cannot echo how important it is. You can see in this last election, so many people wanted to have their voices heard. Unfortunately, even with all the people who came out, we still did not have, I think, the numbers that I wanted in this community. We were pretty high. We usually vote somewhere around 40% in this ward. We were somewhere around, I think, 55, 60, which is, higher than usual. But still, we had 50% of the population who were registered to vote who didn't vote. And so I think it is incumbent upon me as a committee person to let folks know how important that is for their vote. If you don't vote at all, it's almost like you don't exist. And so I think for too long in this community, it's like we didn't exist because our voting numbers have been so low. So I think it's incumbent upon me to educate folks about voting, how important voting is, and how much of a difference that makes. And when you talk about the census, I push very hard to get folks to register for the census or to take the census. And unfortunately, my voice, I think, didn't resonate because usually I'm a guy who knocks on the doors, and because it was COVID, I wasn't knocking on
Yeah.
doors. I couldn't do that. My community, unfortunately, is not one that is as technologically savvy as I would like them to be. And so I don't think the word got out the way that I wanted it to. And for that, I think we'll suffer. And that's why my map's going to be vastly different.
I think that Chicagoans don't always understand that their vote not only supports the candidates that they come out to support, but impacts how seriously their political leaders are taken. If you come
Exactly.
from a ward where there are lots of people who turn out and you have a heavy weighted vote, whether it's in the party or how they look at you in City Hall, it's to your advantage to have a vote in
It
which,
is.
to have a ward in which a large number of people come out, vote, and your elected leaders can see that. It impacts your throw weight, kind of, huh?
It really does. So, and I realized this really early in my term. I went to visit the 48th ward when maybe my first week in office. The former alderman at the time, who was a committeeman, his name was Joe Moore, and he was hosting a candidate series or folks who had just been elected. And I think it was me and three other newly elected alder people. And that room was filled on a Tuesday evening with constituents who just wanted to be part of the process. And I couldn't understand kind of what was going on. But then I realized as time went on, how many people came out to vote, and how many resources went to his community because of the number of people that were out voting. I mean, it is our currency. I can't say it. We go to spend downtown, and when we go to the mayor and we say, hey, we need X, Y, and Z, I'm sure in some kind of way they're looking at the demographics and who votes and how many people are out there. And it is so very important. And I learned that so very early. And I want the kind of organization where people are going to come out on a Tuesday because they want to hear what's going on from their local elected officials.
I concur with everything you've said. My observation, however, is that it's harder for those of us who represent wards that are diverse,
Yes.
or wards in which lots of people face economic challenges. It's harder to get people to get out and vote than it is, frankly, in more privileged parts of the city. Now, let me ask you something. We've talked a little bit about your ward and the county. What do you hope to see from the new federal administration, from the Biden-Harris administration, that would be helpful to your ward, your constituents, our party, whatever?
So what I think is really important for, I think, African Americans as a whole, and I serve probably 90% of my ward is African American. Criminal justice reform is really important to me, and I think we have to push the envelope on that. When people go and they serve or do their time, they've served their time, and so when they come back, although that there shouldn't be an X on their back, you still have to make sure that there aren't violent crimes committed. But there's so many people who have been incarcerated because of drugs, because of nonviolent crimes, because of in some cases just the color of their skin. We have to get a hold on that, and I think that has to come federally. I think that Kim Foxx is doing a great job where she is in trying to lead that effort here in Illinois, in Cook County. However, I think there has to be a bigger push as it relates to criminal justice on their end. One thing that I also think we really need to do is focus on our infrastructure. Cities like Chicago, big cities like Chicago, and counties like Cook are suffering to put new infrastructure in. And so I think a package federally needs to come to help us with those things. I think we're trying to pull, what we can locally, but federally there needs to be some help there. And then lastly, I think they're doing a great job in terms of COVID. But then there's going to have to be some kind of recovery for big businesses, not big businesses, but small businesses, our mom and pop shops, excuse me, I didn't want to say big businesses, our mom and pop shops who are struggling, restaurants who cannot open or who were not able to open. That's going to help jumpstart our economy and get us back to where we need to be. And so, some of those things have happened in this last bill, but I think there still needs to be more done.
All right, so criminal justice reform, and I share your conviction that our criminal justice system grinds up Black and brown people.
It does.
Criminal justice reform, infrastructure, and more investment in recovery, especially for small businesses.
That is correct.
All right, thank you. I'm very
Thank you.
grateful that you took time to talk to us today about your ward and about our county and our country. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam President. And I thank you for all that you do on the county level and then for the party as well. We're so happy to have you and so appreciative of the work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman.